They have been called the architects of global finance, names synonymous with immense wealth and power. For over 2 centuries, the Rothschilds and Rockefellers have shaped the world, their influence echoing through history. The Rothschild and Rockefeller families' legacies are alive today, woven into the institutions that shape our world. Their wealth built not just banks and oil empires, but also universities, medical research, and global organizations. The Rockefeller Foundation helped eradicate diseases and founded the University of Chicago. The Rothschilds funded the arts and supported the creation of Israel. Their philanthropy was strategic, designed to shape society and secure influence. Their power, often discreet, was deeply embedded in politics, health, and international relations. The Rothschild story begins in Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto, where Meyer Amschel Rothschild learned resilience and commerce. Orphaned young, Meyer apprenticed in banking, building a reputation for trust and expertise in rare coins. His big break came as financial advisor to Crown Prince Wilhelm of Hesse, managing his fortune during Europe's upheaval. Meyer's guiding principle unity and loyalty within the family. He trained his 5 sons in finance, forging a dynasty built on discretion and cooperation. Their motto, unity, integrity, industry, became the family's foundation. From humble beginnings, the Rothschilds built a legacy of trust and strategic vision. Meyer Amschel Rothschild's true genius was sending his 5 sons to Europe's financial capitals, creating an unrivaled banking network. Each son established a branch, Frankfurt, Vienna, London, Naples, Paris, communicating through private couriers and codes. Their intelligence network outpaced governments, letting them anticipate markets and move capital swiftly. During the Napoleonic Wars, Nathan Rothschild's London branch financed Britain's war effort, cementing the family's power. The Rothschilds became Europe's unofficial central bankers, funding railways, governments and industry. Their influence extended to monarchs and ministers, shaping national policies. The 5 brothers, united in purpose, transformed their name into a symbol of continental power. Meyer's vision of a family empire was realized on a grand scale. While the Rothschilds dominated European finance, John D. Rockefeller was building an American oil empire. Born to modest means, Rockefeller's discipline and obsession with efficiency set him apart. He entered oil refining in Cleveland, turning waste into profit and outmaneuvering competitors. In 1870, he founded Standard Oil, consolidating rivals through aggressive tactics and secret railroad deals. The Cleveland Massacre saw him acquire nearly all local refineries, demonstrating ruthless capitalism. By the 1880s, Standard Oil controlled over 90% of U.S. refining, mastering vertical and horizontal integration. Rockefeller's empire was built on order and efficiency and relentless ambition. From humble bookkeeper to oil king, he became the wealthiest man of his era. The Rothschilds revolutionized banking, creating a private multinational network that moved capital across borders with unprecedented speed. Their 5-branch system allowed them to finance governments, wars, and Europe's industrial expansion. They saw Europe as a single economic stage, pooling resources and outmaneuvering rivals. The Rothschilds financed railways, underwrote government bonds, and became masters of sovereign debt. Their insight into politics and finance made them indispensable advisors to monarchs and ministers. In a turbulent era, the House of Rothschild stood as a financial bedrock, cementing their legacy. The true secret to the Rothschilds' dominance was not just their immense wealth, but their superior intelligence network. In an age before the telegraph or telephone, information was the most valuable commodity, and the family built a private communication system that was the envy of kings and governments. They understood that financial markets reacted to political news and that knowing something hours or even days before anyone else was a license to print money. To achieve this, they established a network of private couriers, riders on horseback, crews on swift sailing ships, and even carrier pigeons, who ferried information exclusively for the House of Rothschild. These messages, often written in a private code or a form of Judeo-German, crisscrossed Europe, ensuring the 5 brothers were always the best-informed players on the continent. This private intelligence service gave them an almost clairvoyant ability to anticipate market movements. News of battles, political treaties or royal deaths would reach the Rothschilds long before official government dispatches. This allowed them to buy or sell stocks, bonds and commodities with an uncanny sense of timing, profiting from the public's reaction when the news eventually broke. The legendary tale of Nathan Rothschild at the Battle of Waterloo is the ultimate example of this principle in action. While the story has been embellished over time, its core truth remains. Nathan's network delivered the news of Napoleon's defeat to him in London a full 24 hours before the government's own envoy. This advanced knowledge gave him absolute certainty in a moment of extreme market panic, allowing him to position his assets to secure both immense profit and political favor. The system was built on the foundations of absolute trust and family loyalty that Meyer Amschel had instilled in his sons. The coded letters they exchanged were not just dry financial reports. They were filled with detailed political analysis, social gossip, and strategic instructions. Each brother acted as an intelligence chief in his respective capital, gathering information from their extensive contacts in government, high society, and the business world. And this information was then shared across the network, creating a comprehensive and real-time picture of the European landscape. This collaborative intelligence sharing made the 5 branches of the family function as a single, cohesive brain, capable of processing information and making decisions with a speed and accuracy their competitors could not hope to match. This fusion of finance and intelligence fundamentally changed the nature of banking. The Rothschilds demonstrated that a bank's greatest asset was not just the gold in its vaults, but the quality of its information. They transformed banking from a relatively passive activity of lending and money changing into a dynamic, proactive enterprise driven by knowledge and foresight. They were data analysts before the term existed, using information as a form of capital to mitigate risk and seize opportunities. Their couriers, carrying coded messages through the night, were as crucial to the empire's construction as any financial instrument. They were the architects of a system where knowledge was, quite literally, power. Across the Atlantic, John D. Rockefeller was constructing a different kind of empire, one built not on government bonds and international finance, but on industrial might and ruthless efficiency. His domain was oil, the lifeblood of the new industrial age, and his goal was nothing short of total control. When Rockefeller entered the oil business in the 1860s, it was a chaotic and wasteful industry defined by boom and bust cycles. He saw this disorder not as a deterrent, but as a grand opportunity to impose his will and his vision. His core philosophy was simple: competition was sinful and wasteful, and the path to prosperity lay in consolidation and the elimination of all inefficiencies. This belief would drive him to create Standard Oil, the most dominant and feared monopoly the world had ever seen. Rockefeller's initial strategy focused on what he could control: the refining process. While others were speculating on drilling for crude, he concentrated on turning that crude into a usable product, kerosene, which was lighting up homes across America. He applied a fanatical devotion to cost-cutting, a practice he called the American beauty rose theory. To produce one magnificent bloom, you had to pinch off all the buds. He meticulously analyzed every step of the refining process, finding ways to save fractions of a cent on everything from the number of solder drops on a kerosene can to the manufacturing of his own barrels. He famously used every byproduct of the refining process, turning waste products like gasoline, paraffin wax, and petroleum jelly into new revenue streams, giving him a massive cost advantage over less efficient rivals. With this foundation of hyper-efficiency, Rockefeller embarked on a campaign of aggressive expansion. His primary weapon was the rebate. He secretly negotiated with the powerful railroad companies to secure discounted shipping rates for Standard Oil's products. These rebates were not just discounts, they were also drawbacks, meaning Standard Oil received a payment for every barrel of oil its competitors shipped. This gave him an insurmountable advantage, allowing him to undercut rivals' prices until they were forced to either sell their businesses to him at a low price or face bankruptcy. This ruthless strategy, which became known as the Cleveland Massacre of 1872, saw Standard Oil absorb 22 of its 26 local competitors in just 6 weeks, setting the pattern for its national consolidation. This relentless drive for control culminated in the creation of the Standard Oil Trust in 1882. This was a novel corporate structure designed to circumvent laws that prevented a company from owning stock in another company in a different state. By having stockholders in various companies transfer their shares to a single board of trustees headed by Rockefeller, Standard Oil could centrally manage a vast, nationwide network of seemingly independent firms. It was a brilliant legal maneuver that allowed the company to operate as a single monolithic entity, controlling virtually every aspect of the oil industry. Rockefeller had not just built a company, he had engineered a machine, an empire of efficiency that would redefine the rules of American capitalism. John D. Rockefeller's true genius lay in his mastery of integration, a concept he pushed to its logical and terrifying extreme. He understood that to achieve ultimate control and efficiency, it was not enough to simply own the most refineries. He needed to control the entire supply chain, from the moment oil was pumped out of the ground to the moment it was sold to the final consumer. This strategy, known as vertical integration, became the architectural blueprint for his empire. Standard Oil methodically expanded its operations backward into exploration and crude oil production and forward into transportation and marketing. The company purchased its own forests for timber, built its own barrels, and employed its own scientists to develop new petroleum products. The most critical piece of this integrated puzzle was transportation. At first, Rockefeller leveraged his massive volume to dominate the railroads through secret rebate deals. However, he soon realized that true independence required owning the means of transport itself. He became a pioneer in the use of pipelines, a far cheaper and more efficient way to move crude oil than by rail. Standard Oil invested heavily in building a vast network of pipelines that connected the oil fields of Pennsylvania directly to its refineries in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and the East Coast. This move not only slashed his own costs, but also gave him a stranglehold over the industry. Independent producers and refiners who were not connected to his pipeline network were at his mercy, further solidifying his monopoly. This comprehensive control was then extended to the marketplace through horizontal integration, the process of acquiring or eliminating competitors at the same level of the industry. Having conquered the refining sector, Standard Oil used its immense power to absorb or crush any rivals that dared to challenge its dominance. The company was organized into specialized committees that oversaw every function from production to pricing, allowing for unprecedented coordination and strategic planning. By the 1880s, Standard Oil controlled over 90% of the oil refined in the United States, effectively setting the price of kerosene for millions of American households and dictating the terms for the entire industry. Rockefeller's methods completely reshaped the landscape of American capitalism. He replaced the old model of small-scale competitive enterprise with a new paradigm of large-scale, centrally managed corporate monopoly. His success sparked both awe and outrage. He was hailed by some as a visionary who brought order and affordability to a chaotic industry, but condemned by many others as a ruthless predator who crushed competition and amassed an obscene fortune. The public backlash against the perceived abuses of the Standard Oil Trust fueled the anti-monopoly movement and led directly to the passage of the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. Rockefeller's empire had become so powerful that it forced the government to create new laws to contain it, forever changing the relationship between business and the state in America. As their empires matured and their fortunes reached unimaginable heights, both the Rothschild and Rockefeller dynasties underwent a profound transformation. The relentless drive for accumulation that had defined their founders gradually gave way to a new, equally ambitious goal: the strategic distribution of their wealth. This was not simply an act of charity, it was a patrician turn, a conscious effort to convert financial power into lasting social and cultural influence. Having conquered the worlds of finance and industry, they set their sights on shaping society itself. They became patrons on a scale not seen since the princes of the Renaissance, investing their fortunes in art, science, education, and social causes that would carry their names forward for generations to come, embedding their legacies deep within the cultural DNA of the modern world. This shift from profit to patronage was driven by a complex mix of motivations. For some, it was a genuine desire to improve the human condition, a moral obligation that came with great wealth. For others, it was a way to legitimize their fortunes and counter the fierce public criticism their business methods had often attracted. The robber barons of the 19th century sought to rebrand themselves as captains of industry and public benefactors. By funding universities, museums, and hospitals, they could create tangible, positive monuments to their success that would stand in stark contrast to the often unseen, ruthless tactics used to build their empires. Philanthropy became a powerful tool for reputation management, a way to shape public memory and ensure their dynasties were remembered not just for their wealth, but for their contributions. The scale of their giving was revolutionary. Before the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, philanthropy was often a local and modest affair, typically handled by the church or small community groups. These families, however, applied the same principles of scale, strategy, and global reach to their giving as they did to their businesses. They did not just donate money, they created massive, professionally managed foundations with specific, ambitious goals. They sought to tackle huge problems like eradicating diseases, reforming education, and preserving cultural heritage. This systematic, large-scale approach professionalized the act of giving, creating a new model for philanthropy that would be emulated by wealthy individuals and corporations for the next century. They were pioneers not just in making money, but in giving it away. This philanthropic turn also served to consolidate their power in new and subtle ways. The Rothschilds' philanthropic endeavors were as diverse and sophisticated as their financial empire, reflecting the family's deep immersion in European high culture and politics. Having financed kings and governments, they naturally became patrons of the arts and sciences, accumulating collections and supporting institutions with a passion that matched their business acumen. Their grand houses in London, Paris, and Vienna became legendary centers of culture, filled with priceless art, manuscripts, and antiquities. But their patronage went far beyond personal collecting. They made monumental donations to national institutions such as the British Museum and the Louvre, enriching the cultural heritage of their adopted homelands. The family understood that supporting culture was a way to demonstrate civic loyalty and cement their place within the European aristocracy. Their contributions were not limited to the arts. The family had a profound interest in science and education, funding hospitals, research facilities, and academic institutions across the continent. In France, the Rothschilds established hospitals that provided free medical care to the poor. In Vienna, they funded scientific expeditions and astronomical observatories. In England, they supported social housing projects and educational initiatives. This broad portfolio of giving demonstrated a commitment to social progress and a belief in the power of knowledge and innovation to improve society. Their philanthropy was a reflection of the Enlightenment values that had shaped the modern Europe they helped to build, a testament to their belief in progress, reason, and civic responsibility. Perhaps the most focused and historically significant of all their philanthropic projects was the family's support for the Zionist cause. Baron Edmond de Rothschild of Paris, in particular, became a pivotal figure in the early movement for a Jewish homeland. Beginning in the 1880s, he poured vast sums of his personal fortune into establishing Jewish agricultural settlements in Ottoman-era Palestine. He funded the purchase of land, provided settlers with modern farming equipment and expertise, and established new industries like winemaking. He did this quietly and methodically, earning him the title Hanadiv Hayadua, or the famous benefactor. His practical, hands-on philanthropy was instrumental in creating the infrastructure that would lay the foundations for the future state of Israel. This commitment to Zionism was deeply personal, stemming from a sense of responsibility for the Jewish people who still faced persecution across Europe. While other members of the family were more assimilated, Edmund's vision was to create a place of refuge and renewal. His work was not just charity, it was nation-building. The settlements he supported became thriving communities, and his investments helped create a viable economic base for the nascent Jewish society. This aspect of the Rothschild legacy is a powerful example of how their philanthropy could be laser-focused to achieve a specific, transformative geopolitical goal. It demonstrates how the family's immense wealth was deployed not just to adorn European capitals, but to reshape the map of the Middle East and alter the course of Jewish history. While the Rothschilds practiced a form of aristocratic patronage, John D. Rockefeller, guided by his Baptist faith and an unshakable belief in efficiency, pioneered a new, distinctly American model of philanthropy. After accumulating a fortune that was unprecedented in human history, he faced the monumental task of giving it away responsibly. He famously said that the best philanthropy is constantly in search of the finalities, a search for the cause, an attempt to cure evils at their source. This was not about simply alleviating symptoms through charity, it was about using science, data, and strategic investment to solve the root causes of society's problems. He approached philanthropy with the same methodical, data-driven intensity that he had used to build Standard Oil. His first major philanthropic act was the founding of the University of Chicago in 1890. He didn't just write a check. He sought to build a world-class research university from scratch, one that could rival the elite institutions of the East Coast and Europe. He provided the initial endowment and continued to fund its expansion for 2 decades, ultimately giving over $35 million, an astronomical sum at the time. He insisted that the university be a secular institution dedicated to academic freedom and rigorous inquiry. The University of Chicago quickly became a powerhouse of scholarship and innovation, producing dozens of Nobel laureates and revolutionizing fields from sociology to economics. It was a testament to Rockefeller's belief in the power of education to drive human progress. Rockefeller's most ambitious philanthropic vehicle was the Rockefeller Foundation, established in 1913 with a broad mission to promote the well-being of mankind throughout the world. This was philanthropy on a global industrial scale. The foundation assembled teams of scientists, doctors, and experts to tackle massive public health challenges. One of its first major campaigns was a worldwide effort to eradicate hookworm disease, a debilitating parasite that afflicted millions in the American South and across the developing world. The foundation also funded the research that led to a vaccine for yellow fever, a discovery that saved countless lives and made the construction of projects like the Panama Canal possible. This was a new kind of giving, targeted, scientific, and global in its scope. This systematic approach became the blueprint for modern philanthropy. Rockefeller and his influential advisor, Frederick Taylor Gates, created a model that separated the act of giving from personal whim and sentimentality. They established professional staff, conducted rigorous research to identify areas of need, and measured the results of their investments. This was the wholesale approach to philanthropy, in contrast to the retail charity of the past. By funding medical schools, establishing public health programs, and promoting scientific agriculture through the so-called Green Revolution, the Rockefeller Foundation transformed global health and development. John D. Rockefeller, the man once reviled as a monopolist, had successfully transformed his public image and created a new, enduring legacy as one of history's greatest philanthropists. The influence of the Rothschild and Rockefeller families extended far beyond their business and philanthropic ventures, seeping into the very foundations of global politics and international institutions. They were not content to merely operate within the existing world order. They actively sought to shape it. Their immense wealth gave them access and leverage that few, if any, national leaders could ignore. The Rothschilds, with their continent-spanning financial network, became indispensable to European statecraft, acting as de facto financial advisors to monarchies and governments. Their ability to raise or withhold capital could determine a nation's ability to wage war, build infrastructure, or avoid bankruptcy. They were a private power with public consequences, operating in the spaces between nations. Across the Atlantic, the Rockefellers pursued influence through a different, more modern channel: the creation and funding of major international organizations. Following the devastation of 2 world wars, the family, particularly John D. Rockefeller Jr. and his sons, became leading proponents of global cooperation. They believed that international bodies dedicated to diplomacy, health, and economic development were essential for a peaceful and prosperous world. This was not just an idealistic vision, it was a pragmatic strategy. The family's vast financial contributions were instrumental in establishing some of the most significant institutions of the 20th century. Their influence was built into the architecture of the post-war global order, ensuring their ideals would shape international policy for decades. The most tangible example of Rockefeller influence is the United Nations headquarters in New York City. When the fledgling organization was struggling to find a permanent home, it was John D. Rockefeller Jr. who stepped in with a decisive gift. In 1946, he purchased an 18-acre tract of land on the East River for $8.5 million and donated it to the UN. This single act secured New York as the center of global diplomacy and inextricably linked the Rockefeller name with the world's foremost international body. Similarly, their funding was crucial for the World Health Organization and the World Bank, institutions that project a vision of global governance and development that aligns closely with the Rockefeller family's long-standing philanthropic goals. The Rothschilds' political influence was more direct and personal, woven into the fabric of 19th-century European diplomacy. They were confidants to prime ministers like Britain's Benjamin Disraeli and financiers of geopolitical maneuvers like the purchase of the Suez Canal. Their network provided them with unparalleled intelligence, making their advice highly sought after in the halls of power. Both families, through different means, achieved a level of global influence that transcended their roles as bankers or industrialists. They became architects of the international system, using their capital not just to build fortunes, but to construct a world that reflected their interests and their vision for the future, leaving a legacy of power that is both visible and deeply embedded. To us, the Rothschilds perfected the art of wielding financial power as a political tool. Their unique position as a multinational banking family allowed them to navigate the complex and often treacherous currents of European politics with unmatched skill. They were not merely lenders, they were strategic partners to the ruling houses of Europe. When governments needed money, they turned to the Rothschilds, and this dependency created a powerful bond of influence. The family could attach conditions to their loans, subtly guiding policy decisions on matters of trade, alliances, and even domestic affairs. They understood, perhaps better than anyone, that controlling a nation's purse strings was a direct path to influencing its political destiny, making them a formidable, unelected force in international relations. This advisory role was built on a foundation of trust, discretion, and, most importantly, unparalleled information. Because the five brothers operated in all the major European capitals, they possessed a panoramic view of the continent's political landscape. They could offer a monarch in Vienna insights into the thinking of the government in London, or warn a minister in Paris of financial instability brewing in Naples. This made their counsel invaluable. They were more than just bankers. They were political analysts and back-channel diplomats. Their family letters, filled with coded political intelligence, were often more current and insightful than official state dispatches, cementing their reputation as essential advisors to the crown heads of Europe. In the United States, the Rockefeller family's political influence manifested in a more institutional and systemic way. While John D. Rockefeller Sr. was famously wary of direct involvement in partisan politics, his descendants embraced it. His grandson, Nelson Rockefeller, became a dominant figure in the moderate wing of the Republican Party, serving as the governor of New York for 4 terms and later as Vice President of the United States. His brother, David Rockefeller, while never holding elected office, was a quintessential establishment figure. As the chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank, he was a global statesman, meeting with world leaders and wielding immense influence through organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. The Rockefeller family's political power was less about financing specific regimes and more about shaping the intellectual and policy environment. Through their foundations and think tanks, they funded research and promoted ideas that would come to dominate American foreign and domestic policy for much of the 20th century. They championed internationalism, free trade, and a managed form of capitalism, creating a broad consensus among the political elite. Their influence was pervasive yet subtle, working through the institutions that educate policymakers and frame public debate. Whether through direct advice to kings or the shaping of presidential policy, both dynasties demonstrated that great wealth, when strategically applied, is one of the most potent forms of political power. The immense and honestly often hidden influence of the Rothschild and Rockefeller families has inevitably made them central figures in a vast web of myths and conspiracy theories. For centuries, their names have been invoked to explain major world events, from wars and revolutions to financial crises. These theories often portray them as the heads of a secret cabal, a shadow government that pulls the strings of world leaders and manipulates global events for their own sinister purposes. The sheer scale of their wealth, combined with their international connections and preference for discretion, created a fertile ground for suspicion. For many, it seemed more plausible that a secret hand was guiding history than to accept the chaos of chance and complex forces. The Rothschilds, in particular, have been the target of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories since the 19th century. As a powerful Jewish family succeeding in a predominantly Christian Europe, they became a convenient scapegoat for anxieties about finance, modernism, and internationalism. Falsehoods like the story that they funded both sides of every war, or that Nathan Rothschild crashed the London stock market after Waterloo, were created and spread to paint them as greedy and unpatriotic manipulators. These myths have proven remarkably persistent, adapting over time and finding new life on the internet, where they are used to fuel hatred and distrust of global financial institutions and Jewish people alike. The Rockefellers have faced their own brand of conspiracy theories, often centered on their role in promoting global governance. Organizations they supported, such as the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, and the Trilateral Commission, are frequently depicted as secretive bodies where a global elite plots to establish a new world order. Critics claim these groups aim to dissolve national sovereignty and create a single world government controlled by corporate and banking interests. The family's work in public health has also been targeted, with theories falsely accusing them of using vaccines and medicine to control populations. These ideas tap into a deep-seated populist distrust of elites and centralized power. While the reality of the family's influence is more nuanced than these theories suggest, it is undeniable that their power has been extraordinary. The truth is not one of a secret world government, but something more complex. The ability of immense, concentrated wealth to shape institutions, influence policy, and set the terms of public debate over generations. They did not need a secret cabal to exert their power. They did so openly through their banks, their companies, their foundations, and their political connections. The enduring myths serve as a dark reflection of their success, a testament to the fact that their influence became so profound and pervasive that it could seem, to some, almost supernatural. No names in the history of capitalism have attracted more myth and speculation than Rothschild and Rockefeller. The sheer scale of their wealth and the global reach of their influence have made them the focal point for centuries of conspiracy theories. These legends often paint the families as omnipotent puppet masters, secretly controlling the world's governments and financial systems from behind a veil of secrecy. One of the most enduring myths is that the Rothschilds single-handedly financed every major war since Napoleon and profited by backing both sides. While they certainly financed many governments, including those at war, the idea that they controlled the outcomes for their own gain is a gross exaggeration of their role, which was more that of a critical state banker than a hidden instigator of global conflict. Historians offer a more sober and complex assessment. The power of these families was indeed immense, but it was not absolute or supernatural. Their influence stemmed from their pioneering roles in modern finance and industry, their superior intelligence networks, and their strategic cultivation of relationships with the political elite. The legend of Nathan Rothschild at Waterloo, for example, often claims he used his advanced knowledge of Napoleon's defeat to deliberately crash the London stock market and buy it up for pennies. Historical records, however, suggest a more nuanced reality. While he certainly profited from his early information, his primary actions were to support the government bond market, a move that solidified his bank's indispensable relationship with the British Crown. The myth transforms a brilliant financial and political maneuver into a sinister act of market manipulation. Similarly, the Rockefeller dynasty has been cast as the central architect of a new world order, a supposed plot to create a single authoritarian world government. Conspiracy theorists point to the family's funding of international institutions like the United Nations and their involvement in groups like the Bilderberg meetings as proof of this secret agenda. The reality, as supported by historical evidence, is that the Rockefellers were ardent internationalists who genuinely believed global cooperation was essential for peace and prosperity after the devastation of 2 world wars. Their support for these organizations was an extension of their philanthropic vision, an attempt to solve global problems systematically, not a covert plan for world domination. Their influence was profound, but it was exerted through open, albeit elite, channels of policy and institution building. The persistence of these myths speaks to a deeper public anxiety about the concentration of wealth and power. In a world of complex and often opaque forces, it can be psychologically comforting to attribute major historical events to the deliberate actions of a small, identifiable group. These legends provide simple answers to complicated questions. They transform the messy, contingent nature of history into a tidy narrative of control. The truth, as revealed by diligent historical investigation, is that while the Rothschilds and Rockefellers were exceptionally powerful actors who shaped their eras, they were also subject to the economic currents, political shifts, and technological changes of their time. They were masters of the game, but they did not invent the board itself. In the 21st century, the power of the Rothschild and Rockefeller families is far different from the overt dominance they wielded in their respective golden ages. The vast, consolidated empires of Standard Oil and the Five Arrow banking network have long since been broken up, diversified, or transformed. Their wealth, while still substantial, is now spread across numerous descendants, trusts, and foundations, making it less concentrated than in the days of a single patriarch. Their influence today is quieter, more diffuse, and exercised through the modern channels of global finance, venture capital, philanthropic foundations, and participation in elite policy forums. They are no longer the undisputed kings of a single industry, but influential players in a much more complex and multipolar global system. The Rothschild name, for instance, is no longer associated with a single monolithic bank, but with various independent financial advisory firms around the world, such as Rothschild and Company. These firms are highly respected in the fields of mergers and acquisitions and wealth management, advising corporations and high net worth individuals rather than financing nations. They leverage their historic name and extensive network, but they operate in a competitive modern marketplace. Their power is that of expertise, reputation, and connection, not the quasi-sovereign power of their 19th century ancestors. The family's legacy is also carried on through its extensive philanthropic work in the arts and sciences, and through its world-renowned wineries, a symbol of a shift towards luxury goods and cultural patronage. The Rockefeller legacy, likewise, is now primarily expressed through its powerful philanthropic institutions. The Rockefeller Foundation, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and other associated charities continue to be major forces in global health, climate change policy, and agricultural development. They fund cutting-edge research and support initiatives that shape the global conversation on major social and environmental issues. The family's influence is now less about direct economic control and more about agenda setting. By funding specific areas of research and advocacy, they can elevate certain problems and solutions in the minds of policymakers and the public, demonstrating a softer but still significant form of power that shapes the world through ideas and social investment. Ultimately, the modern reality of these dynasties is one of adaptation. They have successfully managed the transition from dynastic family-run empires to more modern, institutionalized forms of influence. Their names no longer evoke the image of a single, all-powerful figure like Nathan Rothschild or John D. Rockefeller Sr., but rather a sprawling network of interests and activities. While conspiracy theories continue to imagine them in smoke-filled rooms plotting world domination, the truth is more human and more in line with the evolution of capitalism itself. Their story today is one of a legacy being carefully managed, their power quieter and more collaborative, yet still profoundly embedded in the financial, cultural, and philanthropic fabric of our interconnected world. From the cramped confines of the Frankfurt ghetto to the burgeoning oil fields of industrial Ohio, the journeys of the Rothschild and Rockefeller families represent more than just monumental tales of wealth creation. They are enduring sagas that fundamentally reshape the very architecture of our modern world. The Rothschilds, with their 5 arrows of finance, transformed international banking into a web of interconnected power, demonstrating that information and unity were as valuable as gold. Their name became synonymous with the stability of nations and the financing of progress, a testament to Meyer Amschel's vision of a family-bound global enterprise. They set a precedent for how private capital could operate on a geopolitical stage, influencing kings and governments through the subtle but undeniable power of the purse. Across the ocean, John D. Rockefeller forged a different, yet equally transformative path. He imposed a ruthless order on the chaos of the nascent oil industry, building an empire, Standard Oil, on the bedrock of brutal efficiency and strategic integration. His methods redefined American capitalism, creating a model of corporate dominance so powerful that it forced society to create new rules to contain it. In his later years, he pioneered a new form of philanthropy, a systematic and scientific approach to solving humanity's greatest problems. He sought not just to give, but to cure, applying the same strategic mindset that built his fortune to the task of bettering the world, creating a blueprint for large-scale giving that endures to this day. The legacies of these two dynasties are not relics of a bygone era, they are living forces that continue to resonate in the 21st century. Their influence has evolved from the direct control of industries and state finances to a quieter, more institutionalized power wielded through global financial advisory, elite policy forums, and massive philanthropic foundations that set agendas in climate, health, and social policy. They remain potent symbols of legacy, not merely of inherited wealth, but of multi-generational strategy, relentless adaptation, and profound global impact. They are a stark reminder that the actions of a few determined individuals can ripple through history, shaping economies, building institutions, and defining the very nature of power. In the end, the stories of the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are cautionary tales as much as they are chronicles of success. They highlight the complex interplay between ambition, innovation, public good, and the immense concentration of power. They force us to confront enduring questions about the role of wealth in a democratic society and the line between philanthropic contribution and elite control. The world we inhabit today, with its global financial markets, multinational corporations, and large-scale philanthropic organizations, was built in large part upon the foundations they laid. The dynasties of power they created may have changed their form, but their stories and their influence continue to shape our own.